So the next mountain, summit number 3, was the highest point in Europe. No, it's not Mont Blanc, but it's Mount Elbrus, which is on the border of Russia in Europe, but that's technically the high point at 5,651 meters. 2 days before I was to leave to go on that climb, I got a phone call from my dad that my mom had died unexpectedly. So I canceled the climb. I already had the car loaded with all of my gear bags. I threw in another suitcase with some black dresses for the funeral, and I drove home to be with my family. I spent about a month there, and with my family's encouragement, I decided to go back and try Mount Elbrus again. So I remember climbing to the top and getting up there and yelling, "Goodbye, Mom." And it was about minus 34 Celsius. The tears were freezing to my cheeks, but I still miss her terribly, but she's always with me in my heart. So the next mountain, summit number 4, was the high point in North America. Mount McKinley, most people call it, but the climbers call it Denali, at 6,194 meters. And for me, Denali was the most physically demanding of all of the 7 summits because I had to carry 27 kilos in my backpack and pull another 27 in a sled behind me. So you'd be walking and pulling with your hips, dragging. I trained for this climb by putting about 20 kilos, a bag of dog food, in my backpack, and I would hike up and down hills where I lived, and my dog would follow me and smell the dog food, and he loved it. So he helped me train. But after a really strenuous climb, but a successful summit, I came back down, and 3 weeks later, I decided to run a marathon. I thought, my legs are strong. I was training for it. It was very hot, and I started to lose vision in one eye. And the doctor told me it was my MS that was coming back. So I went in the hospital. I had 1 week of IV steroid treatments. My vision got better, but my back was really hurting on Denali, so they checked that. The doctor said that I had a pinched nerve and injury on my spine due to one of the lumbar punctures that I'd had many, many years earlier. So I had to have back surgery to fix that, and it took me about a year to get my strength back after the back surgery. So summit number 5, I went to Australia in 2008 to climb Mount Kosciuszko, and that's only 2,228 meters. But because I'm getting older, I thought it was a good time to maybe finish the last 3 of the 7 summits. So when I got there, it was one of the worst blizzards they'd had in Australia in many, many years. So we started out for the climb, but we got turned back. The guide said, "Lori, even if we get to the summit, we won't know because we can't see it." So we turned around, but 2 days later, we went and had a successful summit of Mount Kosciuszko. So from there, summit number 6 was in Antarctica, the Vinson Massif at 4,897 meters. This was really my training ground for Mount Everest. Antarctica is the coldest, windiest, driest continent on Earth. It's 5 million square miles, and 98% of it is ice. Our first summit attempt, it was minus 43 Celsius. we got to about 60 meters of the summit, and we had to turn back because it was too cold, so dangerously cold. So we turned back, but the next day we went, and then it was only minus 32 and no wind, so it felt very warm out. But it was a wonderful climb. Antarctica is just beautiful. So the last of the 7 summits, Antarctica, or Kilimanjaro, Everest, at 8,850 meters. And I call this climbing beyond our limits, because this mountain was the one that really tested my mental strength as well as my physical strength. So on March 29th, 2009, I flew to Nepal to begin the climb of my life. And this mountain would take 2 months to climb. I'm going to read from the journal I kept on Mount Everest. Everest journal entry. Why Everest? March 29th, 2009. For 20 years, I taught elementary and special education in Steamboat Springs, Colorado. My goal as a teacher was to help children believe in themselves and not be afraid to try. Now it's my turn to learn that lesson. In attempting a goal as lofty as Everest, I give myself permission to try. I have to believe in myself in order to live my dreams. Sure, I might not always succeed at what I attempt, but there's no failure in that. The success is in the journey. It's always in the journey. This map shows why it takes 2 months to climb Mount Everest. You walk 10 days to base camp. You follow up and come back down so your body can get used to breathing. Go back up, you go higher to 5,941 meters. Come back down, rest a few days. Go back up, stay overnight, get your body acclimatized, come back down. Go back up a little further, rest again. Now we're going to go and practice with oxygen for 1 night to see if we can breathe. Come back down again. Then walk 3 days down valley, stay a week, come back. Now we're going to go to the top. We put on our oxygen now and leave it on for 5 days. Now it gets hard. Now it gets really hard. If you're lucky, you make it to the summit. Then you come back down the same day, sleep at high camp. Rest another night. Come back down and then walk out for 3 more days. That's why it takes 2 months to climb Mount Everest. There's the gear. Flew in by helicopter, and now it's continuing on by yak and porter. So a week before I left to go to Mount Everest, I got a call from the World MS Day headquarters, and they had heard that someone with MS was going to climb Everest. They said, would you take a flag in case you make it to the top? So it arrived on the back of that yak.